Hello and welcome back to Rock Records Reviewed. My name's Adam, and this week we're going to look at the 12 studio albums made by American rockers Van Halen. Van Halen formed in Pasadena, California in 1972 when Dutch-born brothers Eddie and Alex Van Halen met bassist Michael Anthony and lead singer David Lee Roth, and they went on to do the party circuit around the West Coast for a few years before they released their debut in 1978. David Lee Roth was eventually replaced by Montrose singer Sammy Hagar in 1986, and he made 4 records with the band before he was replaced by Gary Cherone from Extreme. They only made 1 record, and then you guessed it, David Lee Roth was back on board. So if you can keep up and you're still with me, let's get into it and look at the records. Number 12 from 1998 is Van Halen 3, i.e. the third incarnation of Van Halen. This was the one album they made with Gary Cherone. Gary Cherone came into the band amidst a lot of tension, particularly between Michael Anthony and Eddie Van Halen. Michael Anthony only plays bass on 3 songs on this album, and Eddie plays bass on the rest. And I have to say, this is something of an abomination of a record. They hadn't toured or really written anything before they went into the studio. And it's a record that reportedly lost them their record deal, and Gary Cherone has gone on record to say he didn't like at all. There are no tunes, there's no inspiration. The record just it's a mess of a record. There's thematically, musically, it just doesn't get off the ground at all. At 65 minutes long, it's probably 65 minutes too long, and the single Without You is barely hummable. And I think the sooner we move on from this one, the better. I will just say it's possibly the worst record I've heard by a really, really good rock band. Number 11 from 1991, For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. I think we're meant to abbreviate that to get a title that's a little bit naughtier. This album took a year to make. Sammy Hagar was the singer, so this is their third album with Sammy Hagar. Ted Templeman was back producing. He had produced the band from the earlier David Lee Roth days. But I think, again, it's not, the chemistry isn't quite there between the producer, the band, and the singer. It's a stodgy, ploddy record. And Eddie Van Halen's changed his guitar sound, which sounds really, really processed. There's a couple of half tunes on here. There's Pound Cake and Top of the World and Right Now, but really there's not a great deal to recommend it. There are infinitely better Van Halen records to go to first. Number 10 from 1995, Balance. Again, there's a lot of tension here between the singer Sammy Hagar and Eddie Van Halen. I think Sammy wanted to keep the album quite light, and Eddie Van Halen wanted to do songs with more seriousness, more weight to them, maybe more messages. The sound is tighter and leaner than on For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, but it was the last album to feature Sammy Hagar. It was very successful, though. It went to number 1 and went triple platinum. The single Can't Stop Loving You is okay, but it sounds a bit Van Halen by numbers to me. Number 9, OU812 from 1988. I really wanted to love this record when it came out because I really liked the first Sammy Hagar record, and this was the second. But it all seems a bit like a bit of an effort to me, this record. I'm so used to the sort of the light, fun David Lee Roth days, and it seems to me that the sort of rot had started setting in quite early with the Sammy Hagar years. I don't believe him when he sings he's having a good time and all that, and he wants to have a party. It doesn't sound as convincing as it used to. When It's Love is not a bad song. Mine All Mine feels so good. They're all pretty good songs, but there's nothing on here that really elevates it to a great album. And I think the supporting cast of songs, as I like to put it, is not that strong. From 1980, from number 8, our first David Lee Roth album, Women and Children First. Unlike their first 2 albums, this is Van Halen's third album. This album has a lot more overdubs on it and a lot less backing vocals, and those are 2 things which I really love about the first 2 albums, their sense of space and those wonderful backing vocals. So as a result, this is a kind of heavier album. The themes are a bit heavier, there's less songs about having a good time and partying. Interestingly enough, one of the best tracks, Could This Be Magic, which is a sort of folky thing, a folky bluegrass thing, has Nicolette Larson on backing vocals, the only time a woman appears on a Van Halen record, and she was also backing vocalist on Neil Young's Comes a Time record. So there's another of those very strange rock links for you. And number 7 from 1982, Diver Down. This is their shortest album. And 5 of the 12 songs on this album are covers, but they're good covers. I like them. There's Pretty Woman, Dancing in the Street, Where Have All the Good Times Gone? The band was always big Kinks fans. And I think they're great covers. Eddie adds riffs and a new flavour to them. But I really love a couple of the originals, particularly Secrets and Little Guitars, which are absolutely 2 of my favourite Van Halen songs. What I like about this record is there's a lightness, there's a sense of fun here. But bizarrely, it's Eddie's least favourite Van Halen album, reportedly. You can hear that fun when they get together for the last track, Happy Trails, which is a sort of barbershop quartet thing. Which really showcases the band's backing vocals. Michael Anthony and Eddie Van Halen were brilliant backing vocalists, and that kind of double harmony coming in on David Lee Roth's vocal was always a feature of the band that I loved, and it features a lot on all their best songs. And number 6 from 2012, A Different Kind of Truth. This is Van Halen's latest album, even though it's 7 years old now, and it was the one where David Lee Roth returned. By this time, Michael Anthony had left. The tensions between him and Eddie had become too much. And what happened is Eddie got Wolfgang, his son, in on bass guitar. Now, Wolfgang was trudging through some old Van Halen demos from the late 70s, and he thought, there's something here. So he took them to his dad and said, Dad, I think we should do something with these songs. And sure enough, they did. And they got Diamond Dave Lee Roth back in to record these songs that they'd originally demoed with him back in the 70s. And it's so nice to have David Lee Roth back on board. I think compared to Sammy Hagar, the thing is, a great singing is so much more about, being able to sing a great range or even hit the notes sometimes. Singing is about communication and expressing and getting something across. And when I listen to David Lee Roth's tunes and lyrics, I really get a sense of the person he is. And I don't get that at all from Sammy Hagar. Sammy Hagar, it all sounds a little bit rock generic to me. And it's so nice to have David Lee Roth back with these tunes and these lyrics. There's some great songs here. Tattoo, She's the Woman, Blood and Fire, You and Your Blues. These are songs that are just full of really good, funny, witty lyrics and David's irrepressible character. It might not be the greatest David Lee Roth Van Halen album, but it's infinitely better than so many of the others that had different singers for me. And number 5 from 1986, 5150. This was the first album they did with Sammy Hagar, and I was really into Van Halen at this point. In fact, I remember standing on a Sunday outside Our Price, looking through the window at the album on the racks that was due to be released the next day, wishing more than anything I could get hold of it and have a listen to it. This was co-produced by Mick Jones of Foreigner, and you can hear his touch all over it because there's a lot of really good soft rock tunes on here. There's Dreams, Why Can't This Be Love, Love Walks In. There's a sense of a new journey here with their new singer. There's a sense of energy, and I think this is a very, very good pop rock album. I still listen to it. It sounds quite 80s, there's no getting away from that, but it is full of good performances and good songs. At number 4 from 1981, Fair Warning. Now we go back to the tension thing. I think Eddie and Alex Van Halen are probably quite tricky people to get on with. That's the message I've got down the years. But at this point, that push and pull between wanting to make a party album, which is what David Lee Roth wanted to do, and then wanting to make an album of more serious issues, which is what Eddie Van Halen wanted to do, that's really coming through here. There's a lot of tension, and I think as a result, this is their darkest album. It's got some brilliant songs on it. Unchained, Hear About It Later, which is full of those fantastic backing vocals I was telling you about earlier. But this is a really great guitar record. The first few Van Halen records are brilliant guitar records, and we'll talk specifically about why a bit more in a minute. And this is possibly the last great Eddie Van Halen guitar record. After this, it was easy to parody him and make fun of shredders and tappers and things like that. But this is a very, very good record. It's got an edge to it, which a lot of their records didn't have, not quite in the same way. Number 3 from 1978, Van Halen 1. This is the record that's often put at the top of these lists of their albums, and it is a brilliant record. I absolutely love it. The band had been playing the party circuit. They'd been touring with Black Sabbath. They'd been touring with Kiss. And Gene Simmons from Kiss put the money up for them to make a demo, and they eventually went into the studio with only a few songs. So they recorded very much their live set, which included a cover of The Kinks' You Really Got Me. But it was a thin set, but the album itself, which they recorded quite quickly, sounds fantastic. There's a lot of space on this record, which you don't often hear on hard rock records. You've got just the one guitar, Eddie, over here in the left ear. You've got nothing in the right ear. You've got the drums, the vocals, the backing vocals down the middle. And then when the solos come in, there's an overdub here in the right ear. So much energy, but the real focal point of this album, which just changed the landscape of rock guitar playing, is Eruption, a 2-minute instrumental that just blew people away when it came out. People hadn't heard anything like it, and Eddie Van Halen became a guitar hero overnight for his technical wizardry. He was doing a thing called tapping. So those who don't know, it's where you basically use your fingers to tap the neck, and you use the fingers on this hand to play loads of different notes, so you're not strumming this way. It was kind of it had been done many years before by other people, but this was the first time it had been done on this scale, on a big commercial record. It's since become very easy to be parodied, but there's no question the dexterity and the ingenuity of his playing, and it went on to influence tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of guitar players in its wake. And number 2 from 1984 is 1984, and this was the album that broke Van Halen worldwide. Most famous, of course, for the single Jump, which I think is possibly one of the best pop rock singles of the entire decade. Eddie Van Halen, always wanting to sort of try and move on and develop a little bit, decided to bring in synthesizers, something that didn't necessarily sit well with David Lee Roth, but it worked because he wrote the opening riff to Jump on there, and the album went on to sell 10 million copies. It's got Panama, Hot for Teacher, Drop Dead Legs. It's full of great songs. Eddie was already an international star by this point because he had done the guitar solo, the famous guitar solo, a year earlier on Michael Jackson's Beat It. You may recall it. So when this album came out, there was more of a sense of international anticipation than there had been with anything they'd done before. I think it's the album that really broke the camel's back for David Lee Roth. Whether he was fired or whether he was left, that's open to some debate. But I think he just wasn't happy with the way the band was going, and he left to pursue a very successful solo career. And of course, Van Halen went on to make records with Sammy Hagar. But my favourite Van Halen record from 1979 is Van Halen 2. This is in many ways a carbon copy of the first record, but it's more accessible. It's got even more tunes on it, and as you know, I love a tune. It's less punky, and it's just effortless. It's just sounds so easy. It sounds like a bunch of mates just going in and rocking out and playing some tunes and drinking and having a good time, and I love that feel about it. The first record's quite punky. This one is just tune after tune after tune, great riff after great riff. It's the perfect combination of tunes and guitars for me, riffs and raucousness. It was recorded within a week. That's how effortless the whole thing was. Women in Love, Dance the Night Away, Bottoms Up, Somebody Get Me a Doctor. I can sing you every single one of the choruses to those songs and the riffs as well. That's what a great record it is. But it's not often put at the top of these lists, but I think over time it's going to get reassessed. And Van Halen at their best when they were doing this, they really sort of lit the torch and the way for bands like Bon Jovi and all that really melodic soft rock. So whether you think they should be blamed for that or congratulated for that is really about your taste. But that is my list of Van Halen albums. I'm sure you don't agree. If not, please say so in the lists below and let's get a debate going. But I will be back again very soon for another Rock Records Reviewed. Thank you. Bye bye.